Alright, Ustad, Bismillah.
Okay, hold on. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulil kareem wa ala ahl baytihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wa man tabi'ahum ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. So welcome again to this new session. We're on Surah Ar-Rahman, Surah 55, Surah 55 of the 27 juz. Okay, so we start, inshallah, first with the recitation from the Quran, and then the English translation and commentary, inshallah.
Every soul was created with purpose, and every believer was given a chance to act. You may not see it now, but
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
Ar-Rahman.
The most merciful.
Allama al-Qur'an.
Taught the Quran.
Khalaqa al-insan.
Created man.
Allamahu al-bayan.
And taught him eloquence.
الشمس والقمر بحسبان.
The sun and the moon move by precise calculation.
والنجم والشجر يسجدان.
And the stars and trees prostrate.
Okay, so Rahman, that's the Arabic version there. It has 29, I keep saying that, it has 76 or 78 verses, except for Surah 29, except for Ayah 29, which is verse 29, that was revealed in Medina. Okay, the compassionate, so Allah said, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, the compassionate, the merciful. From 1 to 6, in which the reciter read, the compassionate one, Allah. Now, what is interesting about this surah is that on the Arabian Peninsula, there was a Jewish community in Yemen. The Yemen in the New City in Yemen, it was down there. It was there. The king name was Yusuf, and he was somebody who was active in the propagation of his faith, and they refer to Allah as Ar-Rahman. They use this attribute a lot. So, at one time, the Prophet mentioned Ar-Rahman, and the Quraysh say, like he's calling on another God Ar-Rahman. Because they knew in that area, in southern Yemen, or in Yemen, southern Arabia, the people use that word for Allah. And look how things is, eh? It have Christians today who say that when we say Bismillah, there is one God, Ar-Rahman, there is two God, number 3, Ar-Rahim. They actually say that is the Trinity of Islam. You know? So they look for so much little things to create confusion. And what is deep about that, they catch some Muslims, you know, and they catch these Muslims who obviously haven't studied or they don't know nothing about the religion. Because if somebody could come and fool you and tell you Bismillah Rahman Rahim is 3 gods, then something wrong with your head. Something wrong with your education. Because no way Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Everybody know that these are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Names and attributes. It tells you about the character of the Lord you are serving. And that all these attributes that the mushrikeen, those who join partner to Allah, they strip out they strip these attributes from Allah, and they made individual gods of them. So you have the God of compassion, you have the God of love, you have the God of mercy, you have the God of war, you have the God of death, you have the God of life, and and they create many gods out of the attributes of Allah. So this is one of the ways that our ancestors went astray. So the compassionate one, which is Allah, exalted be He. He has taught the Quran. What did He do? He has taught the Quran, which should be another interesting thing. Okay, it should be of interest to you. Why? Why should it interest you? Because the Prophet ﷺ was taught the Quran. Okay, he was taught. That's why I said that through Jibreel, the Quran was taught. But we know everything comes from Allah. Okay, so Allah set up that, and Allah, it come like if I am the principal of a school, and I say that we taught mathematics. I taught mathematics in this school. It don't actually mean that he personally, but he have made the conditions for it to be taught. Now Jibreel, under the direction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was the sheikh of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he was actually taught the Quran. So why today some people feel like they just pick up the Quran and invent anything, or pick up the Quran and say anything, without going through a process of being taught? You see, in the matters of spirituality, some people feel it's a free-for-all. Because for those people, spirituality is like according to how they feel. Okay, it's a feely thing, how they feel, and the vibes they get, and this kind of thing. Right? But if you look at the world we live in, even among the Shaolin monks, you have to be initiated. Even among the certain religious, traditional communities, you have to be initiated. To be an Orisha, you have to be initiated. Initiated means that you have to go through a process of being taught. And those things I've called are spiritualities that we know function in this world today. So Allah taught the Quran. So don't ever think that you don't need nobody to teach you the Quran. Example. The Quran said that when a woman is in a period, right? Quran said, do not touch her. To the men, do not touch her. And the word he uses come from the verb la misa, to touch. Okay, all of us understand what it means to touch. Right? You touch your daughter, you touch your wife, you touch your friend, you hold him and you hold her, talk to them, you touch. So what happened among the Jews, they took it so far that when a woman has her periods, they have a special room or a special house which they go to. Some of the traditional tribes still do that. They have a house for the menstruating women. They go there because they cannot cook for their husbands. They cannot touch any food. Their husband cannot touch them because he become unclean. If they sit down on any chair, you have to purify the chair before you sit down. I can understand that one because in those times, okay, they had cloth to be used as pads. And sometimes, if you have a heavy flow, you can stain your clothes and the chair you're sitting on. I understand that one. Right? But they don't touch the person at all. Now, the Prophet explained that to mean when Allah said touch here, he's speaking about sexual intercourse. So when he said that you should not touch women when they're in their menses, when they're in their periods, you're speaking about having sex with them. And that is penetrating sex. That is off limits. Hug up is okay, kiss up is okay, example. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ told his companions, tie a wrapper around the lower parts, and wherever above that is yours. Right? They don't engage in penetrative sex with the woman. For obvious reasons, she's in her periods. Although I've heard what about some men who like to have sex with women in their periods? And most time, men who like that, either they're really off or they're into some kind of occultic fraternity or something. Okay, where they have to have sex with sometime with a mad woman, or sometime with a dead woman, or sometime with a woman in her menses. It depends upon what kind of powers they're trying to attract to themselves. Right? So Allah al-Quran, He has taught the Quran. Allama Quran. Okay? So we cannot escape this, and this is very important. Okay, we have to be taught the Quran. He created man. Okay? When we say man, we talk about human beings, humankind. And we are separate species than animals. You have animals and you have mankind. Right? And he has taught him speech. He has taught him speech. He has taught him speech, language. And you know how important language is the vehicle by which we convey information, is the vehicle that we communicate with each other, is the vehicle by which we explain things. And it is very, very, that ability to talk, speech, is so important. And it's a blessing, really, if you can hear and you can speak. It's really a blessing. So we should not take those kind of things lightly. We should not take lightly our creation. We have a beginning and we have an end. So we should appreciate being born. I know in our culture, they tend to look for gifts, right? They tend to look for gifts from people when they were born. In fact, you should be giving charity. You should be giving the gift. You should be giving the gift as a thanks to Allah for being born. You give out charity. You thank God, for being born, for the life you have up to now, because it means that you can make tawbah. Once you die and in the grave thy seal, you yourself cannot increase in good deeds. The only way you can increase in good deeds when you die is if you did things that were beneficial to the community or beneficial to people. For example, if you teach people, if you build a bridge, fix a road, establish a hospital, establish a school, anything that you do that is for the welfare of the people, every time that thing that you left behind is used, every time the person who you teach to make, like let me say you teach somebody to pray, every prayer that person do, part of the blessing comes to you. And it is said, that when you are in the grave, the blessing from that thing, when it comes to you, it comes in the form of a person. And it has been reported that you will say, who are you? Why you come here? You have a visitor. Who are you? And he will, the person that I know that he or she will say, I am your deeds that you did so and so and so. You build a bridge. Every time somebody cross that bridge, every time somebody use that bridge, okay, you will get benefit from that. You will get benefit, from that. And it is called Sadaqatul Jariyah. Jariyah means something that is returning. It's a Jariyah that is a sadaqah that come back around. It goes, it rotates. Sadaqatul Jariyah. So as a person you benefit, even if you are in the grave. So it is not like you do a deed in the grave. No, you have done a deed amongst the people and the community that you used to live, and the fruits and the benefits of that action, you get a portion of it, even in the grave. And trust me, being in the grave, awaiting the day of judgment, all of us will want things that will help us. All of us will want things that will help us in the next life. And we want those deeds to be heavy on the scale. We want the deeds to be heavy on the scale. So we want that. All of us will want that. So this is an encouragement to do as much deeds as you can. So Allah has taught mankind, human beings, speech. The animals have like let me say the chimpanzee, the ape, the orangutan, they have mouth, tongue, teeth, everything. But they don't have the speech like us. They have a different type of means of communication. Okay. The sun and the moon, the two celestial things that we see. It is one thing that everybody, unless you're blind, everybody knows about is the sun and the moon. No matter what part of the earth you are familiar with the sun and the moon. Even if you're in an area where there's, some people live so far up north that they have sun for sometimes months, and they have darkness for months, and during the darkness the moon comes out. So those people who live in those zones, they calculate when is the salat, right? So the nearest community that lives close to them, they will follow that person prayer time. So they don't bother to check the sun, or when the sun go down, or when it's Zohar and check the sun. No. That they estimate. All right. So the sun and the moon follows a path. The sun and the moon, they are exact. They follow a pattern. Okay, they follow a pattern. So they move according to a calculation. You can actually calculate the movements of the sun and the moon. You can also calculate the appearance of stars and galaxies. Because these things have a rotation also. So all of this is to spur your imagination, and your knowledge. Allah says, okay, that the sun and the moon have some form of regimentation. Let's see how we can understand that, and we can use that for farming. For example, the people who farm, they plant by the moon. There are certain crops that if you plant it during certain times, you could be in trouble. And I only found out that when I was living in Rio Claro, on a piece of land that my brother had buy, and we was up there trying to clear the land. And a guy came and told us, do not put down any vegetable around this time and this time, because around that time certain insects comes out and they will eat your crop. Okay, so this knowledge comes from people who are engaged in that sort of activity, so they know. Okay, so the sun and the moon follow a strict calculation. They don't do it sometimes. Sometimes it go here, sometimes it go there. And this points to a creator, because if all these things are happening arbitrarily, which means that it just happened for so, all right? Then sometimes the sun will go that way, and the earth will go that way, and sometimes the galaxy will be there and it won't be there. Everything is fixed and calculated scientifically. The whole creation is mathematics. It's a logical outcome. So the atheists say all of this is by chance. All of this is by chance. So if all of this is by chance, then how come they don't deviate, from their course? How come the rotation of the moon don't stop and do something else? How come? And the grass and the trees, they prostrate. And the grass, which is vegetation that has no stalk. So the grass and the trees, vegetation that possesses stalk, the trees, they prostrate, which means they submit. They submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Grass grows a certain way. Grass will appear in a place after certain things are done to that. For example, if you cut down some trees and you come back, let me say, in the next month, you'll find the place full of grass. Nobody implanted. The grass was always there. But because of the shade of the tree, they were not able to grow very fast. But they were not getting much sunlight, to grow. So, and all of these things can be predicted. Knowledge of them is available to the people who are involved with those things. Right? Trees grow and they produce fruit. Okay, one day an apple tree will not decide to be an orange tree, or vice versa. That would happen. So they submit to the program or the decree that Allah has embedded in their creation. Okay, they have submitted and they don't go against it. With us, however, we have the freedom from Allah to go against even our creation, go against our very existence. Okay? We can, some people, go to animals for sexual intercourse. They go to the same sex. Some people are on, they are on dollies, and so people can deviate. All right, I've seen some people like they don't like the nose, and they're not putting some big thing in the nose, shape the face looking like a monster. They shape the face and putting things that make you look like a monster, especially those gothic people. Okay, so the human being is up to a lot of stuff, which means that the human being could be actively opposing the natural way of life. Because Allah allowed that for us. But because He has allowed it, okay, it means that we will be held responsible. Okay, we will be held responsible. So it's not like He gave you something and you have no responsibility. Okay, it's not like He gave you something and He gave you this blessing you have your free will. And that is the beauty of Islam. The beauty of Islam is you submit, you submit your will to Allah. And another part of the Quran said that, Allah has brought, He buy your soul. No, Allah gave you the soul, but He buy it back, which means that the person will submit his soul to Allah. It's considered like a bargain. That is why our way of life is called a deen. It's an exchange. It is almost commercial in its explanation. So Allah said He has purchased of the believers. And what's the exchange? Jannah. The currency to purchase the believers is Jannah. Just like you sell something and you get the money give you benefit. When you sell your soul to Allah, Jannah is the benefit. No, Allah can force all of us to be believers. But He has left it like that for us to choose willingly. So Allah said He has purchased the believers. So if Allah has purchased you, why are you trying to duck Him? And say, He purchased me, but you see this piece here? This is for me. When Allah says He purchased the believers, He's talking about kullu, all of the everything related to the believers. So actually, you are in submission to Allah. And that is the beauty of Islam. Submission to the will of Allah. So when somebody come to you and say, why are you praying 5 times a day all the time? Why are you wearing this hijab? We don't wear hijab here. We don't look at our girls and and look. Why you dress like that? Right? And a lot of us, sometimes we get down. And we feel like, we're not fitting in. But how can you fit in? Okay, when Allah says He has purchased you. So you cannot fit in because you belong to somebody. Right? And that is why the word Abdullah, Abd, is used before all the attributes like Abdul Rahman, Abdul Rahim, Abdul Khalik, Abdul Jabbar, servant of this, servant of that, servant of that. So we should not be, feel away or feel pressured, right? Because them, of course, them didn't sell theirs. So we are not the same. I'm not talking from a point of self-righteousness. We're just not the same because you have become a slave of God. That person is a slave of politics or culture or his own ego. Right? So you are not the same. Well, I say not equal at those who believe and those who disbelieve. And that inequality has nothing to do with if you feel you're more righteous than the next person. It means that your status amongst other human beings is different. And if your status is different, then you cannot be like everybody else. And this is something that we must teach our children. Because this thing does have the biggest effect on our children, especially when they go to school as Muslim. And I can tell you that because I went to secondary school as a Muslim. Not primary school, secondary school from 12 years as a Muslim. And I know the pressures that can visit you as a young person, struggling with your own self, the changes that your body is going through, struggling with your education, struggling with friends, struggling with just being a teenager. So a lot of times I had to sit down and think about it. And the Quran has helped me to deal with it. Because it's not easy. So that's why, for me, I will always have a space for young people. Because this world we live in, many times, big people, adults, fail the test. They want to be strict and judgmental on the youths. You failing your test, Instead of you help him with your test, with his test, or her test, before you help them or understand what they are going through. Because the dunya just crush big people. Big people, educated, uneducated, scholars, non-scholars. The dunya. It will crush you. So much as for those young people who have to battle with that. And the time when we were battling with those things, right? It was problematic. Imagine now, you as a parent, you could go to sleep, and your daughter or your son under the cover, watching pornography. You don't have to know. Your earplugs. Load on the light on the camera. You see. It's not like a long time. I can remember a long time. I can remember going to school, and some man bring about 3 or 4 pages from the Playboy. That was a magazine, a sexual magazine. And the whole school, everybody was running to go and see it. But what I didn't like about it is that the person who was in charge, the dean, ended up punishing everybody, whether you want to see it or not. I didn't like that. Okay? But he scolded all of us. I know for his own reason, but I wasn't involved, and other people wasn't involved too. So the thing is, it's different in this time. This time now we live in. It's more dangerous for these youths. And in my time, I thought it was so dangerous. But now, you talk to a woman twice on the internet, she's sending you naked back and front. You ain't have to ask. But that is the situation in the community we live in. So it's more terrible in these times. And people, corrupt people, using this to lure women, to rape them, lure young girls, as predators, pedophiles. They use so much evil. Some women have something called fans only, right? Which you pay a fee, and you have access to a woman privately, because everybody can't go on the site unless you pay. And she will exhibit. She's like wherever she exhibiting, and feeding the sexual fantasy of men and women. Okay, so we can't compare our time to the time now. It's worse. So sometimes we have to be a little merciful to the kids. When you see children trying to hold on to Islam, you see they're trying to make the prayer, don't come down too hard on them. Try to understand. Let's continue.
And the heaven he raised and imposed the balance.
ألا تطغوا في الميزان
that you not transgress within the balance,
وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان
and establish weight in justice, and do not make deficient the balance.
والأرض وضعها للأنام
And the earth he laid out for the creatures,
فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام
therein is fruit, and palm trees having sheaths of dates,
والحب ذو العصف والريحان
and grain having husks, and scented plants.
Okay. So Allah continues declaring the creation and how his creation has benefited us. You know, how we as creatures of Allah are part of the whole process of creation, and how it impacts on us, and how we should respond to it. So Allah says that, and he has raised the heaven, our immediate galactical heaven here, and he has set up the balance. He has raised the heaven, you know, above us. That heaven in many different parts and in many different sections that we don't know about. We have the Hubble telescope that is looking beyond our area, beyond Earth, travels and is looking at other galaxies. And they take pictures of it. I mean, it's wonderful when you look at these pictures. You know, it is so awesome. As the Yankees just say, it is so awesome. Right? And when you look at that, you know that didn't come by chance. You know, it's like Allah exhibits his artistic qualities. You know, the way things is, you know, and the different colors and how they mix in. And, you know, as an artist, you know, you have to appreciate when you see that. Okay, our minds can comprehend that. If we see it, then we can understand it and we can copy it and add our own little taste it. You see, sometimes people copy it and they might put a baby sitting in the middle, but they might put something, you know, in it to change it. You know, but they have understand. They have seen the picture of it, and they add their own. Nothing is wrong with that. Their own artistic talent to it, you know. And he has set up the balance, which means that he has established balance. He has established justice. This is the creation is not haphazard, as I said. It's not unbalanced. You know, moons and suns and planets will just fly all over the place. Everything is in an order, as the Rasta say. Everything in an order. Everything. Now, this thing called the balance, it is called Al-Mizan in Arabic. For those of us who are on the earth a little while, you remember when you go to the market, there was a scale, you know, and when you're buying fruits and you want 2 pounds, they take a 2 pound weight and they put it on one side. And then they put the fruit on the other side. So once it balances off, you pay that price. Sometimes you pay a little more because the fruit way more than the balance you put. Like 2 pounds, you may add something, an ounce or something else to it to make it equal. Okay, and it is called a scale. And the mizan is similar. They call it a scale. You could call it a scale. But it is a balancing creation. But you only call that scale a mizan because it balances off things. Now, what's interesting about that is that in the ancient Egyptian religion, you see, they recognize that part of the universe. They call it Ma'at. It is justice, order, justice, order, everything that has to do with balancing things. Okay, and they represent it as a female with an ostrich feather in her bonnet, and she's sitting down with her hands open, and she is known as Ma'at. She represents the justice in creation and in society, and the good in society. The opposite of her is something called Isfit, evil. So in their religion, the pharaoh or the king, they call the king Ensut. The Ensut being the Ensut, and this Ensut, the king, he is responsible for establishing justice, fair play, equality, balance in the society. So he has to make sure there is no isfit, there is no evil, there is no robbery, there is no corruption in society. That was his responsibility, to establish Ma'at. There's also a male depiction of justice. It's called Ma'a. But the Ma'at is more famous. Some people don't even know that there's a male version. But the female version has been more prevalent. If you go to the courts, especially those big courts, you will see a statue with a woman that is blindfolded, and she's holding a scale, and she's dressed like the people who are ancient people. She is a symbol of Ma'at. She is a symbol of Ma'at. So elements of Egyptian society have survived in our society. So anytime you see that lady with she's blindfolded and she's holding a scale, she represents Ma'at. She's blindfolded because she favors nobody. When you come to her for justice, when you come before the courts, she represents the courts. They are supposed to be blind. Whether it's rich man, poor man, okay, even though the person is a criminal, he's supposed to get justice because he could be wrongfully accused. Okay? All right? He could be wrongfully accused. So you can't say, well, he's a world criminal, I'm sure he do that. You have to justify that. You have to do investigation. And she holds the scales of justice, as they say. So that is Ma'at there. She's still there and in this society. And is a representation. No way I found that they worship that. No way I found that they worship that depiction. But they had it as a representation of what Allah said here, that in the universe, there's a balance. And they knew about that balance. And they call it Ma'at. We call it Mizan in Arabic. In English, we're talking about justice. Okay? Fair play. All those things, goodness, equality before the law. Equality culturally and economically, where you don't starve out people because you don't like them. So she is still there. And one thing, and why I just quote these things sometimes is because I like to impress on Muslims that Islam didn't came with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was completed during the coming of the Prophet Muhammad. And it was given a name after it was completed by the Prophet. Allah using the Prophet. And he has named it Islam. And he has chosen this way as our deen. Our deen is chosen for us, And therefore, we must understand this first. That all of these things comes from Allah. So, and other societies had prophets who came to them. They were exposed to divine knowledge. And after time, people went astray. And that's why Islam is called a deen. See, Allah has chosen for you your deen, which is Islam. So before it had a name, it was just called the deen, or the Sirat al-Mustaqim, or the straight path. Okay? So these things are very important to know. Of course, the disbelievers say, we're not talking about Islam come with the Prophet Muhammad, but that's not our understanding. It is their understanding because they don't want to give recognition. And then they say we plagiarize in other cultures. And for us now, we should understand that other cultures, we have to give it respect for the good it have in it. And we avoid the bad things in it. Okay? So remember, Islam didn't start with the Prophet Muhammad. And you will find cultures in this world that have elements of Islam. That's why the people of North Africa, they enter Islam very easy. Why? Because a lot of the followers of Isa ibn Maryam, Jesus, the son of Mary, they were persecuted and they ran and settled in North Africa. And these people belongs to a certain section of Christianity. Remember, Christianity is when they went astray. But there were elements in Christianity like the Arians. Okay? They follow a man called Arian. And they were named after him. But he pushed Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. And because of that, the church persecuted them. So they ran into North Africa. So when Islam came, bringing the message of Tawheed, talking about a prophet, it wasn't difficult for them to appreciate and to follow Islam. It wasn't difficult. And here it is, somebody who believes in one God like you, and you were formerly persecuted and killed because of that one belief. And here is this person coming up now and in power. So no more you have to run and hide. And the power is used to check those who kill people just because they believe in Allah. So they accepted Islam in masses. Okay, they accepted Islam very easy. Just like in Africa, there are some tribes who also believe in one God. And when Islam came, it was very easy for them. Like some tribes in West Africa, East Africa, they believe, they call God Wak, and they believe that He's one. The Somalis was part of that religious development. So when Islam came, it was easy for them to make the transition. And that's why I never use the word pagan to describe anybody. Is either you're a Muslim, you're a munafiq, a hypocrite, or you're a Christian or a Jew, a Nasara or a Yahud, okay, or you're a mulhid, an atheist, or you are, what else? Yeah, so pagan or a kafir, a non-Muslim, a non-believer, a non-believer. So the word pagan means people who live in the countryside. Because in the countryside, there was no cathedral. Because in those times when a city was being established, it must have a cathedral. If you don't have a cathedral, it will not consider a city. So the city now was the power in that society. And the church was very powerful. So those people who live in the countryside, the church didn't have much influence on them. So they call them pagans, like folks. Well, they just, like we say country bookie, you know, pagans, but under the Catholic system, it took on a meaning of idolaters, backward people. Okay, it just basically means people who are so far away from the church authority. Okay, they are left to do their own thing. So they call them pagans. Right? So I don't use the word because it's a word that is prejudiced by the Catholics. Okay, the word became prejudice. They just mean folks, people who live in the countryside. And most people live in the countryside were able to carry on their traditional religion away from the church.
Lana,
yeah,
that is different to the Protestants.
Pagans?
Yeah.
No, remember the Protestants came out of the Catholic Church. They were people who protest against certain elements in the Catholic Church, certain teachings. So they call them Protestants. Okay, but when I say they call people who live in the countryside pagans, because they were not under the authority of the church, and they were more closer to their own traditional religion other than the church. So pagan came to mean like it's a bad word because of the Catholics. Okay, you understand? So the Catholics will not call a Protestant a pagan. They'll call people who live. Okay, they'll go Africa and say them people as pagans because they're not following the church. Okay, so And he has raised the heaven and set up the balance, declaring that you should not contravene, that you should not oppose the balance. Let me see another translation. Let me see another translation. Yeah, that you do not go against the balance in the earth, the justice. You do not pollute the earth. You flow with the natural things. Okay, so you do not contravene the balance that Allah has set up. Because when you do that, it affects creation, and it eventually it will affect you. That's why some years ago they were worried because the bees were dying out, and they said if the bees die out, there is one element in the chain of creation, and it will have an effect on other things in creation. If the bees die out, it will have an effect on other things in creation. And we must remember that. So they went on a project now to encourage people to keep bees. Even in the city, you have, even up here, they have people, you can rent a man roof, like those big companies, those big tall buildings. You go up there and you rent the roof, and you set up your hive, and the bees will come. Right? You set up your hive and the bees come and settle there. And they when they settle there, they also produce honey and all the different things. So in the cities, they have established the urban hives. And of course in the countryside they establish it also. So they encourage people to have be involved in beekeeping. So you see, so do not go against justice. Right? And even in your daily dealings in the marketplace, give fair weight and just measure. Because people who know about the scale will know that sometimes the people, the trader or the seller, will put lead under the is lead boy? Yeah, they try to manipulate the weight. Or sometimes they hit it with their hand. And if you're not careful, they say, yeah, it's that. Talk fast and you get confused and you start to pay the money. Right? They have the tricks. And that is why in those marketplaces, you have persons who are called inspectors of scale, of weight and measures. So sometimes there's a man or a woman or an officer who comes around and check people's scale to make sure that the scale is not rigged. You ask for a pound, you get less than a pound. Okay? So the system try to have some justice in the marketplace. And observe the weight with justice, which means be fair. And do not skimp. Do not skimp the balance. Which means do not decrease the value of what is being weighed. So we have justice in the creation, and we also have justice in our daily dealings. Mm-hmm. Justice between you and your husband, justice between you and your wife, right? Justice between how you deal with your kids, your family, and the society. So we stop here for now. Time is going, right? So, and this is a very interesting surah, short verses, but full of wisdom. It's packed with wisdom. And, we just touching lightly on it. Okay? Because we don't have the time. the luxury of having a class like that. Okay, any questions? So that is Surah. That is ayat 9. We stop that. Okay. Any questions? Okay, no questions. So let us complete. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir. Wa tamim bil khair. Rabbi zidni ilman. Rabbi zidni ilman. Rabbi zidni ilman. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa aminu salihat. Wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaikum and rahmatullah, and thanks for coming. So tomorrow we meet up again under the shade of the Quran, inshallah. So have a good night, a good iftar. Don't overdo it, inshallah. So see you tomorrow.
Walaikum
Take care of
assalam.
yourself.
Walaikum assalam.
And take care of yourselves, right? Inshallah.